A Roman war galley, carrying 100 elite legionaries and sheathed in oak, was not supposed to take flight. It was physically impossible, but the soldiers of Consul Marcus Claudius Marcellus were not fighting physics. They were about to discover they had encountered something far more formidable. The sea before the walls of Syracuse boiled. Suddenly, a colossal iron claw descended from the heavens, plunged into the wooden hull, lifted the entire ship as if it were a broken toy, and began to shake it in the air until the warriors rained down into the dark waters like droplets. Then, the claw released the ship. The vessel crashed with a terrible roar, broke in two. Cries were heard, splinters flew everywhere, and absolute terror froze the blood of even the most steadfast veterans of the Republic. This was not a battle. It was a mathematical execution. To grasp how the most powerful military machine in history trembled before the intellect of a 74-year-old man, we must go back. We must understand the nature of this fear. We are in 214 BC. The Roman Republic is bleeding. Hannibal Barca has crushed its legions at Cannae. Rome is humiliated, gripped by terror, and desperately needs a victory. Syracuse has betrayed Rome. They have sided with Carthage, defying the Roman Senate. This is not just politics, it is an existential threat. If Syracuse also falls under Carthaginian control, Rome will lose its dominion of the sea, and the war will be lost. They send their best man, Marcus Claudius Marcellus. He is called the Sword of Rome, a brutal, effective commander, a man who knows neither pity nor defeat. Marcellus arrives in Sicily not with an occupation force, but with a punitive expedition. 4 Roman legions, 25,000 men, a fleet of 60 quinqueremes that eclipses the horizon. Marcellus looks at the city walls from the deck of his flagship and smiles. Why shouldn't he smile? He has the strength, he has numerical superiority, he has Roman military engineering, the best in the known world. Syracuse is merely a city of merchants and philosophers. He has brought soldiers. The plan is simple, a massive simultaneous assault by land and sea. Crush the defenses with brute force, giving the defenders no breathing room. Marcellus gives the order. The war drums thunder. The fleet moves. It is an impressive spectacle. A wall of wood and iron advances relentlessly towards the coast. The Romans have lashed their ships together in pairs to create giant platforms above the water. On these, they carry sambucas, enormous mechanical siege ladders designed to surmount coastal walls. Legionaries, protected by their shields, look up. The walls of Syracuse appear empty, silent. Where are the defenders? Have they fled, praying to their gods? Marcellus believes fear has paralyzed them. He orders the ships, brought right up to the walls. The Romans confidently begin to climb, ready for annihilation. But this silence is not fear. It is calculation. Inside the city, a man wears no armor. He wears a simple tunic. Archimedes is not a soldier. Marcellus plays checkers. Archimedes plays with the geometry of the universe. As they touch the walls, the sky darkens. These are not clouds, these are stones, but not the stones the Romans know. These are not haphazardly thrown projectiles. Archimedes has designed catapults with adjustable range. Huge 300-kilogram stones describe perfect arcs, calculated to the millimeter, and fall directly onto the assault platforms. The sound is deafening, the screech of wood, the crunch of bones, the scrape of metal. A single stone destroys an entire sambuca, sending dozens of legionaries plummeting into the void. Stunned, Marcellus orders, "Faster, forward, get into the dead zone," he shouts. His military logic is impeccable. The catapults have a minimum range. If they hug the wall, the projectiles will fly over their heads. As the Romans huddle at the base of the wall, believing themselves safe, the walls themselves seem to come alive. Invisible embrasures open at eye level. Suddenly, hundreds of scorpions, small, precise ballistae, open fire at point-blank range. This is not a rain of arrows. These are iron bolts as thick as an adult man's arm, fired with kinetic force capable of piercing shield and armor. Centurions shout orders. No one hears. Men look up, searching for the enemy to strike. But they see only stone and death. And then, the true nightmare begins. Survivors watch as colossal wooden beams, rotating on unseen axes, emerge from behind the battlements. They loom over the sea, casting long shadows on the ships. From their ends hang thick chains with iron hooks, shaped like hands, an iron hand. The helmsmen of the ships try to steer backward, but it is too late. The hooks descend with unnatural speed. They latch onto the prows. Counterweights inside the city fall, and physics does the rest. The prows lift, water surges into the sterns, men slip on the tilting decks, screaming, falling into the sea, a flood of debris and corpses. Then the mechanism jerks, releasing the ship, its keel smashed by the impact with the water. Marcellus watches as his priceless quinqueremes, the pride of Rome, sink one by one, and he screams, "Retreat!" The battered and humiliated Roman fleet desperately races for the open sea, leaving behind thousands of dead bodies floating in the Syracusan bay. Enraged, Marcellus arrives at his land camp. He throws his helmet on the ground. He looks at his generals, their faces pale with terror. They have fought Gauls, Carthaginians, pirates, but they have never seen anything like this. This mathematician, he roars, is using my ships to scoop water from the sea as if they were wine goblets. But the sword of Rome is not so easily broken. If the sea is closed, he will attack by land. He has 20,000 soldiers ready to storm the Hexapyle gates from the other side of the city. There are no cliffs there, only solid ground. Their Roman infantry is invincible. Marcellus believes the worst is over. He thinks Archimedes only had tricks for ships. He is wrong. The nightmare on land is just beginning. The earth trembles beneath the sandals of 20,000 legionaries. If the sea was a trap, then solid ground will be an expiation. There are no treacherous waves here, no bottomless abysses underfoot. There is firm soil, Roman discipline, and the most perfect military formation ever devised. The tortoise, or testudo, is dense ranks of men with rectangular shields locked overhead and on the sides, creating a shell of wood and cured leather, capable of deflecting any arrow, dart, or ordinary stone. It is a human armored tank. They advance towards the Hexapyle gates with a dull, terrifying rhythm. Left, right, left. Marcellus watches from behind. He lost his ships. Yes, but Rome was not built on water. Rome was built on the march, and nothing can stop the Roman march. The soldiers approach the walls. They expect the usual rain of arrows. They raise their shields, lock their ranks, preparing to hear the harmless clatter of rebounding projectiles. They feel safe. They are invincible. Suddenly, ropes spill from a box, releasing tons of stored energy. What falls from the sky are not arrows, but stones the size of wagons. The projectiles do not fall randomly. They fall with incredible verticality, calculated for maximum kinetic energy. When a 300-kilogram stone falls into the center of a testudo from a height of 30 meters, physics is ruthless. Shields don't just break, they explode. The arms holding them shatter. The men beneath them are reduced to an unrecognizable mass of flesh and iron. The perfect formation crumbles like an insect, stepped on by a giant. But the horror doesn't end there. As the survivors try to regroup amidst the dust and screams, the walls change again, just as they did at sea. Wooden beams slide outwards, but this time, they carry no hooks. They carry enormous blocks of lead and stone, tied with ropes. The Romans look up, paralyzed. The beams stop directly overhead. The mechanism triggers. The block falls. There is no defense. The impact crushes an entire section of the line. Then the mechanisms inside the city quickly lift the block. The beam rotates a few degrees to the left, and the process repeats. Impact, death, lift, rotate, impact, death. This is industrial slaughter. Legionaries, the bravest men in the world, fall into panic, break ranks, flee. But even in flight, they are pursued by death. Marcellus watches his army disintegrate for the second time in a few days. This is not a military defeat. It is psychological annihilation. He glances at the dark silhouettes of Syracuse and shivers. A new disease has settled among the ranks. Archimedophobia. The terror is so pervasive that merely for a guard on the Syracusan walls to stick a simple rope or a piece of wood over the battlements is enough for entire centurions of Romans to turn and flee, screaming, "The machine is coming! It's coming!" Marcellus summons his officers. The tent is thick with smoke, and shame hangs heavy. The consul, a man who has killed enemy kings in single combat, sits in a chair and emits a bitter, dry laugh. "We must stop fighting this geometer," he says. He looks at the city map. He uses my ships to scoop water and drives my legionaries away with stones like stray dogs. We are making fools of ourselves before the gods. The decision is made. The direct assault is over. Brute force has been defeated by the force of intellect. Marcellus changes strategy. If he cannot take the city by force, he will take it by starvation. The siege begins. 8 months, 8 long months of blockade. Marcellus surrounds the city by land and sea, cuts off supplies, and waits for the stomachs of the Syracusans to do what his swords could not. It is a game of patience, slow, agonizing. But Syracuse is no ordinary city. They have grain reserves for years, they have water, and they have hope that Carthage will send help. Indeed, the Carthaginian fleet attempts to break the blockade several times, keeping the flame of resistance alive. Time is playing against Rome. Murmurs begin in the Roman Senate. Why can't Marcellus, the great hero, take one Greek city? How much gold is this failure costing us? Clears throat. The pressure on Marcellus from politicians intensifies daily. He needs a victory, and he needs it immediately. Then fate presents him with a chance. Not a crack in the wall, but a crack in discipline. A Roman spy, an unobtrusive man who had been negotiating prisoner exchanges near the fortress walls, brings vital information. He had spent days counting bricks. He measured the height of a specific section of the northern wall known as the Galagraba Tower. It's lower there than it looks, he informs Marcellus. And that's not all. Marcellus leans forward. In 3 days, the spy whispers, there will be the festival of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. The Syracusans have received a lot of wine. They plan to celebrate. They believe we are defeated, that we are simply sitting here waiting to die of old age. They will lower their guard. Marcellus's eyes gleam. An opportunity has appeared. But it is a suicidal risk. To exploit it, he needs a group of men willing to climb the wall in complete silence, under the cover of pitch darkness, right under the nose of Archimedes' machines. If they are discovered, there will be no salvation. The machines will awaken and erase them from the face of the earth. Marcellus needs volunteers, climbers, silent killers. The operation is prepared in the utmost secrecy. The darkest night is chosen. The wind blows strongly, masking the rustle of sandals. A select 1,000 men, carrying ladders sized according to the spy's calculations, approach the Galagraba Tower. Inside the city, laughter and drunken singing can be heard. Wine flows like a river. Vigilance wanes. Who would attack at night after 8 months of inaction? The Romans reach the base of the wall, set up the first ladder. The first soldier begins to climb. His heart pounds so hard he fears the sentries above will hear it. He reaches the edge, pokes his head over. The tower is empty, or nearly empty. The guards are there, but they are insensible, with empty visible jugs rolling on the floor. They secure the tower, seize a section of the wall, and open the first side gates. At dawn, the Syracusans wake with brutal hangovers, but the sound that dispels their headaches is not birdsong, it is Roman trumpets. They are inside. Marcellus has entered the outer city. The siege is over, the slaughter is about to begin, but Syracuse is huge, divided into fortified districts. The inner citadel, the island of Ortygia, and, most importantly, Archimedes' workshop, are still far away, and Archimedes is not asleep. The old man wakes to the sounds of chaos. He knows the end is near, but his mind, a mind that was worth more than the entire Roman army combined, is not thinking of escape. He is thinking of a final task, a task he cannot leave unfinished. As Roman legions flood the streets, thirsting for blood and revenge for the humiliation they have suffered, Marcellus gives a strange order, an order that defies any military instinct. Anyone who touches a single hair on his head will die by my hand. Marcellus wants to capture the greatest weapon. He wants to capture the brain that almost destroyed Rome. But in the chaos of a falling city, orders sometimes dissolve in smoke and blood. A young, ignorant legionary, full of adrenaline, kicks down the door of a wealthy quarter. He is looking for gold. He is looking for loot. What he finds is an old man drawing circles in the sand on the floor of his house. The soldier doesn't know who this is. He doesn't care. A dusty room. The sun rises over Syracuse, but the light brings no hope. It brings smoke. The legions, who have lived in fear for 8 months, crushed by unseen stones, are now an uncontrollable wave within the outer walls. Roman discipline, the legendary foundation of the Republic, is breaking before the promise of plunder. They are no longer soldiers. They are predators released from a cage. They break doors, burn temples, tear gold from the statues of gods. The 75-year-old man does not lift his head. He is kneeling on the floor, absorbed by a geometric task drawn in the dust of the room. The soldier barks an order. "Get up, General Marcellus summons you." To the soldier, Marcellus is the god of war, and his order is sacred law. But to Archimedes, Marcellus means nothing. Rome means nothing. War is a trivial inconvenience compared to the eternal truth of mathematics before his eyes. The old man doesn't even turn. He merely raises a wrinkled hand as if to swat away a fly and utters his last words. It is not a plea. The soldier, trained to kill or die, does not perceive indifference. He feels insulted. Adrenaline turns to blind fury. Who is this old man to ignore the conqueror? There is no dramatic pause, no background music, only the flash of Roman steel. The sword descends. The man who legend says set fleets ablaze with mirrors and lifted ships with a mechanical arm falls onto his own diagram, his blood erasing a solution the world will never know. The brightest mind of antiquity is extinguished at the whim of an anonymous soldier who could not read. Marcellus's face hardens as he carries the body, wrapped in cloth, or simply conveys the terrible news, realizing what has happened. He feels no triumph. Instead, a deep, almost physical sense of loss washes over him. He had ordered him captured alive, and it was not out of pity, but ambition. He wanted that mind for Rome. He yearned for Archimedes to create machines for the Republic that would make his legions invincible. Now, all he has is a lifeless corpse. The Iron Marcellus retreats from his generals. He looks at the burning city and curses the foolishness of his own soldiers. He orders a formal funeral for the enemy. He searches for Archimedes' relatives to ensure their protection. It is a rare gesture of remorse for a man accustomed to drowning cities in blood. From the genius's house, the Romans take only one spoil: 2 spheres, a celestial globe and mechanical planetaria that simulate the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. These are more relics of what they have destroyed. But there is no time for mourning. Syracuse has not fallen completely. The Romans have occupied the outer districts, the residential and commercial quarters, but the fortified citadel, the island of Ortygia, and the impregnable fortress of Euryalus still remain in the hands of the defenders. Within these fortifications, survivors are sheltered, including Syracusan leaders and, more dangerously, mercenaries. Men who know that Rome does not forgive traitors. Marcellus wipes the sweat from his brow. He has killed the sorcerer, but the castle remains impregnable. Archimedophobia has vanished, replaced by a new, brutal reality. A siege within a siege. The urban warfare has just begun. And Marcellus realizes that to smoke these rats out of their final refuge, brute force alone will not be enough. He will need something dirtier. He will need betrayal. The island of Ortygia is a natural fortress, a rocky outcrop surrounded by the sea, connected to the mainland by only a narrow bridge. The last defenders have taken refuge there, Syracusan nobility, and, more dangerously for Marcellus, clears throat mercenaries. This presents a massive logistical problem for him. He could besiege them for years, but he knows something fundamental about war. Loyalty has a price, and hunger quickly devalues honor within the walls of Ortygia. The tension there is suffocating. The city leaders want to negotiate an honorable surrender. Roman deserters fighting for Syracuse know there will be no amnesty for them. If Rome enters, they will be crucified. And in the midst of all this are the Spanish mercenaries. They do not fight for flags or ideals. They fight for whoever pays. And Syracuse has little left to pay with. Marcellus finds his key in the person of a man named Mariscos, captain of the Spanish mercenaries who guards the Retusa fountain, a vital point of defense by the sea. The negotiations are quick and dirty. They are conducted in darkness using light signals from Roman ships. Marcellus's offer is simple. Surrender the citadel, and you will live. You will not only live, but you will become a wealthy Roman citizen. Resist, and you will die of starvation with these Greeks. Mariscos does not hesitate. He is a professional soldier, not a martyr. The agreed-upon night arrives. While sentries loyal to Syracuse watch the bridge, expecting an attack from land, a single Roman barge silently glides towards the dock controlled by Mariscos. There are no assault soldiers on board. There are Marcellus's emissaries, who are to seal the deal. Mariscos opens the side gate. This time there are no battle cries, no catapults, no hellish machines. The fall of Syracuse's last fortress happens shamefully quietly. The Spanish mercenaries turn against their Syracusan employers. They open the large gates from the inside. Marcellus's legions cross the bridge. What follows is not conquest. It is systematic destruction. Syracuse, the wealthiest and most beautiful city in the Greek world, a rival to Athens, is stripped of everything. This time, the plunder is official and total. It is not the blind fury of the troops. It is the organized greed of the Roman state. Marcellus orders everything taken. Statues that have stood for centuries in temples are torn from their pedestals. Paintings, jewelry, golden utensils, exquisite furniture. Everything is loaded onto ships. For the first time in history, Rome absorbs an entire culture. Hellenistic art fills the Republic's ships. The spoils are so immense that they will forever change the aesthetic tastes of the crude Romans. The surviving citizens of Syracuse are sold into slavery or stripped of their lands. The city ceases to be a power. It becomes a trophy. Marcellus walks through the empty streets of Ortygia. He has won. He has accomplished his mission. He has eliminated the Carthaginian threat in Sicily and avenged Cannae. But as he watches his men load Greek art onto ships, he realizes that the taste of victory has a metallic tang. He has destroyed something that Rome cannot replace. He has extinguished the light of Greek science with the boot of Roman militarism. The war in Sicily is over. Syracuse is Roman. But across the sea, on the Apennine Peninsula, the true monster remains at large. Hannibal Barca still poses a threat, and while Rome rejoiced at the fall of Syracuse, Hannibal watched closely, waiting and preparing his own bloody response. The war has not ended. It has merely shifted to another theater of operations. The Tiber River, Rome's dirty brown artery, has never seen anything like it. Marcellus's ships, heavily laden to the waterline, ascend the current. They carry no wheat, no barbarian slaves. They carry the beauty of the world. Roman soldiers, accustomed to sacks of grain and amphorae of oil, stand in stunned silence. They unload marble statues that seem alive, bronze effigies reflecting sunlight, paintings that deceive the eye. This is the soul of Greece, ripped from its roots and dumped onto the docks of a city of warriors and farmers. The inhabitants of Rome flock in droves to witness this spectacle. For the first time, the Republic realizes what it means to be an empire. This is not just survival, it is possession. The victory over Syracuse injects a new drug into Rome's veins, the thirst for luxury. Old conservative senators spit on the ground, arguing that these Greek trinkets will weaken Rome's warrior spirit. But Marcellus does not listen to the old men. He wants his glory. He demands a triumph, the ultimate parade, a general painted red like Jupiter, a chariot drawn by 4 horses, marching armies behind, ritual executions of the enemy leader. He deserved it. He took an impregnable city. He defeated an invincible mathematician. But the Senate of Rome was a nest of envious snakes. The war is not over, they tell him coldly. Hannibal is still in Italy. We cannot celebrate a complete victory while the Carthaginian continues to burn our crops. He is denied a triumph. He is given an ovation. Marcellus enters Rome not in a chariot, but on foot. He does not wear the laurel wreath of complete victory, but a myrtle wreath. He sacrifices a sheep, not a bull. This was a veiled insult, a way of saying, "You are useful, Marcellus, but you are not a god." Yet, hundreds of miles to the south, in a tense, silent military camp, someone understands the scale of what Marcellus has achieved far better than the Senate. Hannibal Barca receives the news. His face, gaunt from years of campaigning and marked by the loss of an eye, shows no emotion, but his mind, sharp as Archimedes, makes a grim calculation. Syracuse was his great hope. It was the key to opening a second front, to strangling Rome from the south, to cutting off their sea routes. With the fall of Syracuse, Sicily becomes a Roman fortress once more. With the fall of Syracuse, the Roman navy becomes the absolute master of the Mediterranean. Hannibal looks at his officers, seeing weariness in their eyes. They have won battles for years but lost the war. They have killed 100,000 Romans, but Rome simply raises another 100,000. And now, Rome has the gold and the machines of Syracuse. The Carthaginian giant finds himself trapped. He is a lion in a cage that grows smaller each day. He can no longer receive reinforcements by sea. He can no longer expect Greek cities to join him. They have seen what happened to Syracuse and are afraid. The siege of Syracuse was not just a battle for a city. It was a psychological turning point of the entire war. Rome has ceased to fear losses. Now, Rome is playing to win. But Marcellus, the man who tipped the scales, was not destined to enjoy his stolen art or his incomplete glory for long. His fate was tied to Hannibal's. The sword of Rome was restless. He did not want to die in bed, surrounded by Greek statues. He wanted Hannibal's head, and Hannibal, wounded and cornered, was now more dangerous than ever. Marcellus asks the Senate for one last campaign. He wants to hunt the lion. The Senate agrees. They send him back to the front, to southern Italy. What Marcellus does not know is that Hannibal is not a mathematician trapped in a tower. Hannibal is a master of ambushes, and he has studied Marcellus. He knows his impatience, he knows his ego, and he has found the perfect place to use it against him. We are in 208 BC. Southern Italy is a furnace of dust and heat. Two predators are trapped in a geographical cage. In one corner, Claudius Marcellus, the conqueror of Syracuse, the sword of Rome with an ego inflated by victory and a desperate desire to cap his career with his rival's head. In the other, Hannibal Barca, the one-eyed genius, the man who has humiliated the Republic for 10 years, but is now cornered without ports, without reinforcements, living by his wits. This is a duel of styles. Marcellus, a direct, brutal, noisy hammer. Hannibal, an unseen, patient, deadly web. They are near the city of Venusia. Between the two camps is a hill covered by a forest. The ideal tactical position. Whoever controlled this hill controlled the battlefield. Marcellus looks at this hill and sees an opportunity. Hannibal looks at this hill and sees a trap. Roman military strategy dictated reconnaissance of the terrain before moving entire legions. The sensible thing would be to send scouts, slaves, or junior officers who could be discarded. However, Marcellus was not known for his prudence. Pride led him. He wished to personally survey the territory to feel the advantage before the advance, and made a mistake inexcusable, even for a recruit. Taking his consular colleague, Titus Quinctius Crispinus, with him, he set out. Yes, the two supreme commanders of the Roman army, together. This was a colossal security breach, and a ridiculous escort, 220 horsemen, predominantly Etruscans, whose loyalty was questionable. With this small group, he trotted carelessly towards the wooded hill, laughing and relaxed as if on a stroll. They were unaware that the hill harbored danger. Hannibal had not occupied the summit. That would have been too obvious. He had hidden his best killers in the lowlands, in the dense undergrowth, in the blind spots of the slope. As the Numidian horsemen, men who rode without saddles and hurled javelins with surgical precision, Marcellus ascended the slope. The forest was quiet, unnaturally quiet, and only one bird sang. Suddenly, a whistle pierced the still air. Hell erupted from beneath the earth, guttural cries, the thud of hooves on dry grass. But the Numidians did not attack in formation. They surrounded. They were a swarm of enraged wasps. Before the Romans could draw their weapons, they were already encircled. The Etruscan escort panicked. Seeing the ambush, they quickly realized, this is a slaughter. They turned their horses and fled, abandoning their commanders. Marcellus and Crispin were left alone with a handful of loyal men. It was a brutal, bloody scene. No heroic duels, no farewell speeches, just a desperate melee in the dust. Crispin took 2 spears in his body but managed to turn his horse and, bleeding, dying, escaped. Marcellus was not so lucky. The sword of Rome tried to resist. He was a born warrior, a man who had killed kings with his own hands, but he was 60 years old and surrounded by javelin throwers moving faster than thought. But a Numidian spear, thrown with force and hatred, found a breach under his arm. It pierced the metal, pierced his ribs, pierced his lung. Marcellus fell from his horse. The man who conquered Syracuse, the man who despised Archimedes, dies face down in the dirty earth of an anonymous hill, killed in a minor skirmish that he himself provoked with his impatience. Silence returned to the forest. A few minutes later, Hannibal arrived. The Carthaginian commander dismounted, walked among the Roman corpses. His men moved the bodies aside to let him pass. He stopped before the fallen consul. Hannibal did not smile. He did not celebrate. He looked at Marcellus's face with a strange mixture of respect and melancholy. He recognized an equal. He acknowledged the tragedy of a great warrior, killed in a cheap trap. But Hannibal was pragmatic. He knelt and took Marcellus's inert hand. He tore off the consular ring seal. This ring meant power. With it, Hannibal could forge letters, send false orders to legions, sow chaos in the Roman command system. Even a dead Marcellus would serve Carthage's cause. Hannibal ordered something unusual for the time, something that demonstrated the strange nobility of this savage war. He ordered Marcellus's body washed, dressed in rich tunics, and cremated with military honors. He sent the ashes to Marcellus's family in a silver urn. "A good soldier has died," Hannibal said. But as the smoke from Marcellus's pyre rose to the sky, Hannibal understood that it changed nothing. He had killed the sword of Rome, yes, but Rome had many swords, and to the north, on the Iberian Peninsula, a new threat had emerged. A young Roman commander, who made no mistakes of the old men, a young man who had studied the defeat of his father and uncle, a young man who had survived Cannae, his name Publius Cornelius Scipio, and he did not want to fight Hannibal in Italy. He had a far more ambitious plan, a plan that would make the fall of Syracuse seem like child's play. Scipio did not look at southern Italy. Scipio looked at Africa. Rome does not weep. Rome reloads. As Marcellus's ashes cool, the Republic makes its most daring move. Instead of defending its walls, they decide to attack the enemy's heart. Publius Cornelius Scipio, the youth who studied the massacre at Cannae as if it were a sacred text, does what no one expected. He ignores Hannibal in Italy, crosses the sea, lands in Africa. It is 204 BC. The war shifts hemispheres. Carthage, a rich, trading, proud city, is gripped by absolute panic. They had perceived the war as something distant, happening on the fields of Italy. Now, the smoke from the villas burned by Scipio's legions could be felt from their own balconies. Carthaginian aristocrats, the same men who had denied Hannibal reinforcements for fear he would become too powerful, now cry his name. They send desperate messengers to southern Italy. The message is short and bitter. Return, save us. In Italy, Hannibal receives the order. This becomes the darkest moment of his life. He surveys the lands he has held for 15 years, lands where he has defeated every consul sent against him, annihilated entire armies, and held Rome in fear behind its walls for over a decade. He had never lost a battle on Italian soil, yet he had lost the war. With a roar of despair, Hannibal boards his veterans, the lions of Italy, men who have aged in battles with Romans. They leave the peninsula not as conquerors, but as firefighters, dispatched to extinguish flames in their own home. The moment Hannibal's foot touches African sand, the atmosphere changes. He is no longer a predator hunting on foreign land. He is now the last shield of a civilization on the verge of collapse. He realizes who he is about to face. Scipio is not Marcellus. Scipio has no pride. He has coldness and calculation. He has studied Hannibal's tactics better than even the Carthaginian officers. The two armies converge on a dusty plain named Zama. It is 202 BC. The fate of the Western world will be decided in one day, on a few square kilometers of sand and blood. Just before the battle begins, something extraordinary, almost cinematic, happens. Both commanders request a meeting. In the void between the two armies, on horseback, unarmed and without weapons, two men ride towards each other. Their eyes meet. On one side, Hannibal Barca, 45 years old, one-eyed, gray-haired, exhausted, a living legend, the bane of Rome. On the other, Scipio, just over 30, elegant, confident, undefeated, the embodiment of the future. They are said to have silently admired each other. Hannibal tries to negotiate. He understands the fickleness of military fortune. Take Sicily, take Spain, but leave us in peace, he offers. It is a reasonable offer, but Scipio has not come to discuss borders. He has come to finish the job that Marcellus and others began. He looks at the old lion and shakes his head. Unconditional surrender or battle? He replies. Hannibal feels it. He turns his horse. There are no more words, only steel remains. They return to their troops. The Zama plain plunges into silence. 80,000 men freeze. The wind whips up dust. Hannibal has one last trump card, 80 war elephants. Enormous animals, trained to crush infantry ranks. This is brute, natural force against Roman discipline. Hannibal believes terror will break the Romans again. He raises his hand, a trumpeting sound. The earth begins to tremble. The elephants charge. It is a gray avalanche of tusks and muscles, gaining speed, ready to turn Scipio's legion into a bloody stain on the sand. The Roman warriors see death approaching. They remember the terrible stories of their fathers. They recall the Trebia River. They recall the Alps. But Scipio's brow does not furrow. He does not shout. He merely waits. He has prepared a trap, not a pit or stakes, but a trap of human geometry. A maneuver so risky that if it fails, Rome dies today. The elephants are 100 meters away, 50 meters away. The roar is deafening, and then Scipio gives the signal. The moment the gray death seemed ready to crush the first rank, the Roman trumpets do not give the command to hold. They order to open. Something happens that defies military logic. The Roman maniples move sideways in unison. In seconds, the wall of shields disappears. Wide passages, empty corridors of human flesh pierce through the entire Roman formation from front to back. The elephants, animals driven by instinct not to crash into solid obstacles, see a free path. They do not stop. They do not attack. They simply run through the open corridors, crossing the Roman army without touching a single soldier. And as they run, the Romans hiding on the flanks of these corridors pepper them with javelins. Driven mad by pain and noise, the animals emerge from the Roman rear, having caused no damage. And worse, in their panic, they turn and charge into Hannibal's own cavalry. Hannibal's trump card is gone. Terror has not worked. Now it is steel against steel. The infantry lines clash. The sound is like a mountain collapsing. It is a disgusting, slow, agonizing struggle. Hannibal's mercenaries fight for money. The veterans of Italy fight for survival. Scipio's legion fights for the future. For hours, no one yields. The Zama plain turns into red mud. Scipio watches the horizon with concern. He has sent his cavalry, led by his friend Laelius and the Numidian king Massinissa, to pursue the Carthaginian horsemen beyond the battlefield. If they do not return soon, the Roman infantry will collapse under the onslaught of Hannibal's veterans. Hannibal, from his horse, sees the Roman formation beginning to buckle. He is about to achieve victory again, against all odds. If he breaks the center now, he will win. But then the ground begins to vibrate again. It is not the heavy tread of elephants, but the rhythmic, fast-growing thud. Hannibal turns his head back. A cloud of dust rises on the horizon. Standards emerge from the dust. These are not Carthaginian reinforcements. This is Roman cavalry. They have returned. Hannibal closes his single eye for a moment. He knows what this means. Hannibal turns his head back. A cloud of dust rises on the horizon. Standards emerge from the dust. These are not Carthaginian reinforcements. This is Roman cavalry. They have returned. Hannibal closes his single eye for a moment. He knows what this means. This is a maneuver he himself employed at Cannae to crush Rome. Now, this tactic is used by a student against the teacher. Massinissa's cavalry crashes into the Carthaginian rear with the force of a hydraulic hammer. Hannibal's army ceases to be an army. It becomes a stunned, screaming mass of men, surrounded on all sides. The formation disintegrates. The slaughter is total. The veterans who survived 15 years in Italy, crossed the Alps, humiliated consuls, are now exterminated like cattle. Hannibal sees the fall of his personal guard. He sees the collapse of his empire. In these last minutes, there is no room for grandeur, only dust, blood, and the cold realization that the world has changed masters. Hannibal, the man who swore eternal hatred to Rome as a child before an altar, does the only thing left for him to remain a nightmare for his enemies. He survives. He turns his horse and gallops towards the coast. Behind him, he leaves 20,000 dead and the dream of a free Carthage. Silence slowly descends on Zama. Scipio walks among the bodies. There is no triumphant music in his head, only the fading hum of adrenaline. He removes his helmet. The air smells of copper and guts. He looks north, towards the sea, towards Rome. Marcellus died in a dirty ambush. Archimedes fell to the sword of an ignorant man. But their deaths were not in vain. They bought time. They generated fury, and that fury forged the steel that today decapitated the great power of Africa. The sun sets over the Mediterranean. It is no longer an uncontested sea. It is now a Roman lake. The Republic has survived its darkest day, but looking at the field of corpses, one truth becomes clear. The republic that entered this war no longer exists. Something new has been born, something harder, richer, more brutal, and more powerful. An empire is not proclaimed by decree. It is proclaimed here, in the silence of victors who understand that there is no one left in the world to stop them.